Indiana football looks to make more history against Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, but there are some concerns as the Hoosiers are underdogs.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. It is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day and the #1 sports podcasting network. I've got my guy, Brian Smith of the Portal Podcast, part of our Locked On Podcast Network, where he talks about NIL, transfer portal, coaching changes as well, and how that impacts recruiting. We're going to get to that a little bit later in today's episode, plus the good and the bad about Indiana football. The Hoosiers are the #2 ranked team in the country, and they're playing in the Big Ten championship game. But Brian has a couple of concerns that we're going to talk about. But we'll talk about the matchup on its own, recruiting impacts for Indiana, all that on today's episode. But first of all, I want to tell you that it's brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Well, Brian, it's Indiana and it's Ohio State. We've talked about this for a month and a half, 2 months, that this was going to be the matchup. Took some drama down the stretch, but we got here. It's the Hoosiers and the Buckeyes for a Big Ten title coming up this weekend.
This is finally the moment we find out if Indiana has taken that next step. And Jacob, I mean, it's a big one because Ohio State is the beast. It is the most dominant program in college football. I think they're on their own level until otherwise proven. Ask Michigan, as they just got smacked in their own building, and Ohio State didn't even play their A game. Yeah. So I would say Indiana has to come up with some new things schematically, maybe a few plays they haven't run. They're going to have to try some different things. The advantage I think they have playing in Indianapolis, playing in a situation where it's close to home, like they're going to be comfy. My only real question, and this, you take this however you want, can Indiana get off to that good start? They have to believe in their head from the outset. It can't be 7-0 after 3 minutes.
Yeah.
It can't be. If they do that, I think they got a chance. Like they've got to start fast. So we'll see. But I'm very curious about this game. It has so many layers to it.
We saw fast starts against a couple of teams this year, right? The Illinois game is a perfect example where you jump on them from the rip, and there's no looking back. The Oregon game was a good example where Indiana was able to use a lot of its momentum and carry that into a 10-point win. All the other games against the mediocre opponents, the Michigan States, the UCLAs and things, those games are not the concern. But you go back to games this year like Penn State or against Iowa, right? Those games that were very close against some pretty good competition. And you also go back to last year's game against Ohio State where Indiana just didn't have a chance. Now, that one was in Columbus. This one's in Indianapolis on a neutral site. You mentioned being close to home. We expect there to be a lot of Indiana fans in downtown Indianapolis with a crossover of football and a basketball game going on in the same town. So it should be, you'll be there. There's a lot of people wearing the cream and crimson that are going to be hanging around Indianapolis. But Curt Cignetti even spoke to this already about how they were intimidated last year. They couldn't get over that factor. It was the big, bad Ohio State Buckeyes. But I think people should be talking about the big, bad Indiana Hoosiers. Brian, you're the second-ranked team in the country for a reason.
Indiana probably isn't going to get respect, is my guess, until they beat somebody that has that label. It's got to be one. It's got to be a Georgia, a Texas, Ohio. They got to beat one of them straight up when that other team's got their quarterback, Jeremiah's healthy, and all that stuff.
I think they got some of that after Oregon, though, don't you?
They got some of it.
Yeah.
But I didn't think they got the bump that I expected.
Okay.
I don't know why that is, because winning at Autzen, like,
by 10 points.
Yeah, I know. And name one person that you think is picking Indiana in this game.
Not many, not other than people that cover Indiana, and even half of those people probably won't pick the Hoosiers in this game.
Well, I'm gonna pick Ohio State because I think they deserve that respect.
Sure,
but some people are thinking, this is going to be. I'm not buying it's going to be 24-3. I don't see that at all. And I think they've learned from last year, both the Ohio State and Notre Dame game, and they also changed their roster, got a little bigger, did some things they had to do. getting Coogan up front. They got a couple of defensive linemen that transferred, etc. They kind of figured some of that out. But now this game gives you a chance to prove that you made the right decisions. Personnel, when it gets to the very top, it's such a thin line on who's going to win. And look, nobody's guarding Jeremiah Smith, okay? There are going to be NFL guys that struggle mightily to guard him. Indiana's going to have some problems there, but so is the rest of the free world. But everywhere else, I think Indiana's got a chance to compete. And you're one play away. Like they need a pick six or they need a scoop and score. They need something like that, especially if they can get it early. Then that game's a pick 'em kind of situation.
Is there a world where I don't want to talk about Indiana losing the game, and we will get into some of the good and the bad, the concerns about this Indiana team here in just a little bit, but is there a world, Brian, where Indiana gains respect on the national landscape in recruiting, which of course is your expertise and more? If they keep it close, this is a barn burner and you lose at 31-28 at the buzzer. I mean, is there a world where keeping it close and losing a good game gets you the respect you're looking for? Again, we don't want to talk about the Hoosiers losing this game. We're not here for moral victories, and Curt Cignetti's not either. But just from the national perspective, is that something that can happen in your mind?
100%. How you look, the perception matters. And just for relevance, look at the playoff committee right now. Obviously not the most popular people in the world, depending on which fan base you are. Everybody's mad because everybody thinks their team's better than where they're ranked. That's just pretty much how this goes. To that end, the eye test matters with national media, what articles they write, what recruits think, what high school coaches think. Like in my realm, recruiting, the eye test is everything. So I think that it's a very big factor. How they perform, especially in the trenches, that was what was talked about last year when they struggled against Ohio State, and especially in the second half of that game. They weren't the same as Ohio State, but neither was really anybody else. I mean, Notre Dame and Texas had their moments they didn't do so well against them. So I get it, but can you take that next step up? People want to know, have you improved? And again, if they lose by 3 or something, I think that would be a huge momentum builder. If you win, I don't even know how I could calculate it, but it would be massive.
Yeah, I mean, Indiana's already seeing the recruiting bumps from being an undefeated team, handling their business down the stretch. I mean, representing in the Big Ten championship game and possibly being a top 4 seed in the college football playoff. I mean, the recruiting momentum you're going to get from that in itself is incredible. But then if you take down the Ohio State Buckeyes in the Big Ten championship game, and your first appearance to get your first win would be pretty remarkable. Our friends at FanDuel, as of Monday, right, Sunday night, Monday morning, have the Buckeyes favored at 5.5 points. Does that seem about right to you? Seems about right to me. A little low, to be quite honest with you. I thought it would be right around a touchdown, and I'm sure it will move a ton between now and Saturday night in downtown Indianapolis, but Buckeyes favored by about 5.5. Does that seem right to you?
I'm not surprised at where it opened. I'm curious to see where it closes.
Yeah.
I figured a touchdown to 8 points is where it would close. I mean, it could go down. I heard one person think that it should be about a 3-point game. And I'm like, okay, that was interesting. Somebody that knows more about gambling than I do, but I think Ohio State, I would rather them be happy with the line. I don't want it going the other way, to be honest. I don't want Jeremiah motivated. So.
No, they don't need any more motivation for the best team in the country. But Indiana's right there, and it doesn't get any better. The number 1 and number 2 downtown Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship game. And while we're excited for this and think that Indiana has a good chance to pull off the upset, maybe some concerns that Indiana needs to kind of fix, clean up before they take on the Ohio State Buckeyes. We'll talk about that coming up next here on this episode of Locked On Hoosiers with our man Brian Smith of the Portal Podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers with the Portal Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Game Time, where right now is the time to be a part of Game Time. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. With 48 teams in it for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part of an event like this. That's why the Game Time app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. Heck, our man Brian bought tickets to the Indiana basketball game this weekend in Indianapolis against Louisville using the Game Time app, one of the hottest tickets in the town. He used Game Time to get him there. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and all your other tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Welcome back into this episode of Locked On Hoosiers with our man Brian Smith of the Portal Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Goins, and we appreciate you being here. Again, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. And make sure you subscribe to Locked On Hoosiers, but also subscribe to the Portal Podcast as well. And we're going to talk some of the craziness, the madness going on in college football right now with the portal and NIL and coaching changes and the calendar. I mean, it's out of control. We'll talk about that in our final segment. But Brian, you've got some concerns about the Indiana Hoosiers after an undefeated season, greatest one we've ever seen in the history of Indiana football. You still have a couple of concerns about the Hoosiers going up against Ohio State. And I want to ask a question on the forefront before we get into those. Is it a question about Indiana in the long term, or is it a question or a concern about Indiana against Ohio State in particular?
The latter. It's about matchups.
Okay.
Indiana, from the long term, they're trending in the right direction. It's a college football roster is not built in a day. It's like Rome. It was an idea, but it took a long time.
Sure.
This is a process. Now, for Ohio State, that process can get buzzsawed if you're not prepared. My concern is Indiana's size in their secondary. Who guards Jeremiah? Who guards Carnell? Like, I know those guys, and they understand matchups. They understand technique. Yeah. Anything that Indiana does, they're going to have probably some kind of answer. That's a very good coaching staff. Mm-hmm. Can they match up in one-on-ones in the red zone in particular? Ohio State has annihilated teams in the passing game in the red zone. Most teams suck in the red zone because there's limited space. Well, you have 2 first-round picks at wide receiver.
Yeah.
How does Indiana do that? Like with Jeremiah, you can shade coverage to a certain degree. Okay. What do you do with Carnell? And oh, by the way, Brandon Ennis was arguably the number 1 receiver in the country. It was Ennis and Tate were often considered number 1, and then Jeremiah the next year. I mean, It's insane. So I don't know how they're going to do that when they get down there. My other concern is Indiana's defensive line. How much depth do they have? Because Ohio State, unfortunately for Indiana, has started running the ball better. If you can make them one-dimensional, that's one thing. But if you don't have a lot of NFL-level depth, and I don't know if Indiana has that kind of depth, second half concerns me. That game, 90% of the teams Indiana plays probably doesn't matter. But against Ohio State, their size up front, and I know it's weird, they got a running back named Bo Jackson, which as a kid who grew up as a Bo Jackson fan and was the one who played at Auburn, that's weird. But he's a legit running back. He's a freshman. He's a guy, and they're starting to open up bigger holes. Their O-line was their one question mark, but they played pretty well against Michigan. If Indiana has any chance against Brandon, Carnell, and that guy named Jeremiah, they have to be lights out without an extra guy in the box. That's like saying 6 + 6 is 30. You know what I mean? It doesn't add up. Yeah. How are they going to do that? Because I don't think Indiana has a guy up front you have to scheme against and automatically double team with Ohio State's talent. Most teams do, but not Ohio State. I need to see that. So it's just Indiana's defense. They got players. But Ohio State, you can't prepare for them in practice because nobody has Jeremiah.
Yeah.
You can't practice against that. So how do they do it?
Yeah, I mean, it is a concern because most teams have one go-to guy, maybe 2, right? Indiana's got Elijah Surratt, who came back against Purdue. You have Omar Cooper, and you feel pretty good. But when you start talking about Jeremiah Smith, it's like, oh, yeah, easy. We'll just put D'Angelo Pons on him. That's fine. You feel pretty confident in that matchup to where you've got 2 NFL guys, 2 All-Americans going at each other. D'Angelo Pons will make a play here and there. Jeremiah Smith's going to make a play here and there. You feel like that could almost be a wash, but then you bring it up. Carnell, Tate, and then Ennis, who has come on late as well. It's like, well, crap, then what do? Now you're starting to talk about pull safeties over like Amari Farrell, who comes up with interceptions all the time, and you're pulling coverages and having to double somebody else. And then it leaves somebody wide open that you don't expect. And Ohio State has enough of those guys, I think, to make an impact. And then you said it, running the football. They look pretty darn good against Michigan with Bo Jackson on Saturday, but it was more volume than anything. He had, 2 big runs, I think, like a 15, 16-yarder early, had another big one later in the game, but it was just by pure volume and just wear down that Michigan team. So thankfully, I think Indiana's relatively healthy coming into this game, especially on the defensive side of the football. I look at the second level. I look at your Aiden Fishers of the world, your linebacker spot to come in and make plays when they have to. And whether that's dropping back in coverage or just coming up and run support, or even bringing some of those secondary guys up and run support, whatever the case may be, Indiana cannot have communication issues, Brian. That's a concern I've seen all season long, and it's gotten the Hoosiers burned, is miscommunication in the back end of the defense where somebody's just running wide open over the middle of the field, down the sideline, or whatever the case may be. We're talking about Julian Sayin, who is second in the Heisman race right now, according to our friends at FanDuel. He doesn't miss open receivers, and those are some of the best route runners in the country. But if anybody can adjust and do what they need to do, it's Bryant Haynes and this Indiana defense. And that is a concern, but I trust them to make plays when they have to. Then you look on the other side of the football. Any concerns for you offensively? Because Julian Sayin's the second best betting odds to win the Heisman Trophy. You know who's number one. It's Fernando Mendoza. So think about that. Number one team in the country versus number two team in the country. Number one in the betting favorites for the Heisman Trophy and number two in the betting favorites for the Heisman Trophy. Any concerns for the Indiana offense led by Fernando Mendoza, running back duo of Roman Hemby, Kalon Black, and then a full healthy receiver room this Saturday?
I'm just curious about the trenches. Skill players I'm not worried about. Last year, Indiana got beat up front. Mm-hmm. This is a better line than it was last year. But Ohio State, they didn't put new players in. They reloaded.
Yeah.
One of their DNs was Florida's player of the year when he came out of high school. He hasn't played until now. He's a senior. He had to wait 3 years. So from the same school Jeremiah is from. Imagine that. The point is still the same. They have a lot of guys. Indiana has to be able to run the ball early, establish it, set up play action. It's not a news flash. But that way, Jeremiah is twiddling his thumbs on the sidelines. That's the greatest defense against who is probably going to end up being a Hall of Fame player. He's that good.
Yeah.
They need to have him standing there being bored on the sidelines. They can run the ball early. That would certainly mitigate a lot of concern.
Yeah, I love Roman Hemby, Kalon Black. I mean, look, Michigan ran the ball. Not overly great, but with the running backs, they played pretty well. Still confused on why they limit Bryce Underwood as much as they do, but Indiana's not going to limit Fernando Mendoza. If he has time, he has shown to be able to make the NFL level plays. If we're talking about concerns, though, Fernando Mendoza, again, against Purdue, had 3 or 4 very questionable decisions where he threw it right in the hands of Purdue defenders. They just couldn't come up with it because, well, they play at Purdue. And you can't do that against Ohio State. But we saw it against – yeah, exactly. And so I trust Fernando Mendoza. Again, there's a reason he's the betting favorite to win the Heisman Trophy. I think he's the best quarterback in the country when he's playing his best, when he's protected, when he has time, and when Indiana's offense is moving down the field. But if you put it in harm's way, and Ohio State's going to take advantage of that. They're good for a reason. And I was overly impressed with Ohio State against Michigan, but I've been really, really impressed with Indiana down this stretch. And both teams are undefeated for a reason, Brian. So it should be a fascinating game on Saturday night.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if Indiana gets to a good start, we give Fernando a chance. Ohio State hasn't had any close games. The Texas game finished that way, but Texas's offense was just garbage. Mm-hmm. That was Julian's first start. I mean, if they played that game now, I'd imagine Ohio State would win by more, but the point is still the same. It's been a minute. You've got to make them feel uncomfortable at halftime. Then you got a chance. If you're down 17-14 or something like that, they have to make adjustments. You got a shot. I'm just worried about that first 5 minutes or so. Indiana needs a hot start.
Yeah, the only game other than Michigan that I can think of recently for Ohio State that was close at halftime was the Penn State game, right? Where the Nittany Lions got a turnover. They scored late, had them on the ropes, and then Ohio State believed they shut them out in the second half. So Indiana's got work to do, but they've got the team to be able to take down the Buckeyes in the Big Ten championship game. We're going to talk a lot more about that leading up to Saturday night in downtown Indianapolis. But we have another segment to go, and we're going to zoom out a little bit and just look at college football as a whole, because chaos ensued over the weekend with coaching changes and rivalry weekend, transfer portal, calendars broken, and our man Brian's going to help us break it all down when we come back on our final segment coming up next. This episode of Locked On Hoosiers, in conjunction with the Portal Podcast, is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. The holidays always feel a little easier when you already know the perfect gift. And Omaha Steaks makes it almost too simple. Whether you're treating yourself this season or sending something memorable to family and friends, Omaha Steaks delivers handcrafted perfection right to their door. And this week is the best time to jump in because their cyber sale is here and the deals are huge. If you want to give something to your dad or your granddad or even just somebody on the family, look, maybe you've got a spouse, then you don't know what to get that certain somebody on their side of the family. Omaha Steaks is the way to go. Get them a great deal, get them a great steak, and they'll remember it forever. Save big on unforgettable gifts with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off select favorites during their cyber sale. And for an additional $35 off, use promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com. Promo code COLLEGE. Terms apply. See their site for full details. All right, final segment here on today's show. We got our man Brian Smith of the Portal Podcast. I'm Jacob Goins of Locked On Hoosiers. And man, madness is going on right now in college football, Brian, with coaching changes more than we've ever seen. Guys leaving to go separate places. The portal is now open, or I guess players are announcing they're going to the portal. I can't keep up when it actually opens. And then NIL money being thrown around like crazy. I mean, what do you feel the biggest storyline is coming out of rivalry weekend across college football?
Fans are fanatics, and yes, I'm trying to make fun of that word. Fan is short for fanatic. The expectations from fans is bonkers. If you need entertainment, although unrealistic, just scroll X, type in a head coach. I saw a guy that just shredded Lane Kiffin for going to LSU, saying he was always a liar. He never I'm like, bro, he was there 6 years.
Yeah.
College football terms, that's a lifetime.
Yeah.
And no offense to Ole Miss, LSU's a different animal for what it's capable of. That's just reality. So I'm just baffled by some of the stupidity. That's part of it. But also the money. Like, we're seeing all these schools struggle to get rid of coaches. I cover Florida State. The only reason Mike Norvell's there is their contract, beginning and end of conversation. And it's the same thing at some other schools too, Wisconsin, etc. Be careful for what you wish. Like, Kiffin's getting 12-ish, something like that, $1 million. And it's like a 7 or 8 year deal. I mean, is it a lock that he's going to fit in Baton Rouge? I went to grad school for a little while at LSU. That is a very unusual place.
Yes. And
their expectations are win yesterday, not today, yesterday. Mm-hmm. So how is that going to work? And it's that way across the board. Like Penn State, bro, as we do this podcast, maybe it changes by the time this airs, but Penn State's a good job. They don't have a coach.
They still don't have a coach. Yeah.
And they were one of the first ones to bomb their coach. And this shows you how hard it is to hire a guy, because not everybody wants to deal with the boosters and all the expectations. Because I know Penn State won't say this when they end up at the podium, but they're going to be on coach number 6, 7, or 8. I mean, that's got to be an awkward moment for the AD and the president when they go into that press conference room.
I mean, it seems like LSU's the only one that's truly gotten their guy, right? I mean, that's Arkansas and Auburn and Florida, all those jobs. Penn State, again, clearly doesn't have their guy yet. I mean, LSU's going to be the only one that comes away with their guy. And the Indiana spin that I've had on this is, thank God Indiana went ahead and got Curt Cignetti locked up. Do I fully agree with all the money and fully guaranteed and things like that of the contract? No, because that's a lot of money to pay somebody, no doubt about it. But you don't have to deal with this, man. Indiana has removed itself from the drama, from the chaos, from the madness, and they've just been able to focus on the season, whereas a team like Ole Miss, who's about to make the college football playoff, is now having to promote its defensive coordinator just so they can survive while their head coach gets on a private jet to Baton Rouge. I mean, how do we fix this, man? The calendar is broken. College football seems to be broken. Can we fix this, Brian, or are we just going to have to go through this forever?
It's going to get worse.
Oh, that's good.
If you think it's bad now, wait till next year, the year after. A few of the hires that have been made in the last 48 hours, and maybe the one at Penn State again, as we do this podcast, we don't know who they're going to get. One or two of them is going to be obvious by the middle of their second year that they're not the guy.
Jeez. Yeah.
How's that going to go, Jacob?
Very badly. Very badly. Somebody's going to get paid a lot of money to not work again, which is the craziest thing I've ever heard of in my entire life. And I thought that this could be the cycle, Brian, that fixed that, right? I was hoping that it would be LSU or Florida or Auburn or Penn State or whoever that comes out and says, hey, we're going to hire this big name guy like Summerall to Florida, for example. I thought maybe they would be the one to say, okay, we're going to hire you on a 2-year plan, 3rd-year option. We're going to pay you based off of you winning rather than, hey, Lane Kiffin, here's $12 million a year. Welcome to Baton Rouge.
All the agents have the leverage. Once you
Broken.
fire your coach, there are only like 3 or 4 agents that really handle the top end coaches. Leverage is not with the institutions. So with that, you brought up the point. I've said it. It may be one thing you're not going to get 2 or 3, but no, I don't even know if anybody signed a 5.
6 and up. Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's like
that's crazy. That's just crazy to me, man. Like
3 years and you're done if you don't get it done. So you're paying for 3 more years at 8, 10, 11, $12 million a year.
Yeah.
And it's not a good look, especially like in a state with like Louisiana, where that state's broke as a joke.
Mm-hmm.
So even if the booster's paying it, it's not a good look. It's not good politically. And even, anywhere else, it's the problem. Like Ole Miss is going to pay a guy that's like, no offense to him, but where has he been a head coach?
Yeah.
They're going to pay him a whole bunch of money. That state's broke as all get out too. So with that being stated, are we sure Pete Golding's the guy at Ole Miss, or did they just make a charged hire because they don't know what to do?
Yeah.
I'm going with the latter.
Yeah. Which points back to college football having major issues on top of you have players who are trying to get ready for a college football playoff. Some of them are entering the portal or at least announcing that they're entering the portal. Then you've got coaches trying to take players from other teams and poach and do this and do that. I mean, it's a disaster right now. It's an absolute disaster. And again, I just can't say enough how glad and thankful I am that Indiana is not in this mess. Thank God. Okay. Look, again, do I love Indiana guaranteeing all that money for all those years? No, I don't, because I don't know how long Kurt Cignetti is going to do it. But the fact that we're not dealing with this is fine by me, man. And Indiana's in a better spot because of it and preparing for a Big Ten championship game this weekend rather than having to go out there and try and find a head coach and pay a bunch of money. So
the last point I'll make on that, and I'm shocked by it, not one, but both of Indiana's coordinators are still employed in Indiana. And I haven't, to be honest, I'm sure they've been contacted. That's just part of the business. I really haven't heard their names that much. That really surprises you.
Yeah.
It surprised me.
Thank you for putting that in the universe, Brian. We appreciate that.
Well,
we were keeping that close to the chest and hoping nobody remembered,
I have a feeling that the agents for both of those guys know. I'm sure one of them will leave here sooner than later, but I thought they would both be hot names. They have not been.
Yeah.
So good for Indiana. They're kind of lucking out. So, hey, take it when you can get it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mike Shanahan on offense, Brian Haynes on defense. I think they're 2 of the best coordinators in the country because their units are 2 of the best in the country as they prepare for the Big Ten championship game this weekend against Ohio State. We're going to talk so much more about it here on Locked On Hoosiers, but make sure you check out our man, Brian Smith, on the Portal Podcast, part of our Locked On Podcast Network. He's covering all of this chaos in college football as we speak. So the same way you find us at Locked On Hoosiers, you can find him on the Portal Podcast as well. We are back tomorrow with a message about Indiana in the Big Ten championship game. And if they don't get some news from the college football playoff, there's a chance that Indiana should make a statement because of it. We'll talk about that tomorrow, plus more crossover episodes, more outside perspective, and a whole lot more as we go along. But until then, Hoosier fans and college football fans, stay safe, and we'll talk to you later.